You've probably heard the expression, building a business is the most powerful personal development journey you will ever take. Now, I am embarrassed to say that I have felt this and shared this because I've actually come to see that this myth is one of the most damaging myths to entrepreneurs, and it disproportionately negatively impacts women entrepreneurs in particular. And in this episode, I'm going to explain why. So at Safi, we have the opportunity to speak to hundreds of operators a year, literally over 300 to 400 operators every single year. We get to talk to them about their businesses, about what's working, what doesn't work. We get to gather that research. And over the course of years of speaking to hundreds of operators per year, we've started to see a very distinct pattern emerging. And the pattern looks like this. Increasingly, we have spoken to women operators who have invested in business coaching programs or in a business coach. And maybe they've invested in one, two, three, even four. And what we've been hearing is I loved my coach. I loved my community. I feel incredibly grateful for the work. I developed so much as a woman and as a leader, and my business didn't really move. So they were holding both truths, that they were grateful for the experience, that they felt that they personally derived value as a leader, but that there was little to no payoff for the business itself. And that truth is exactly what we're going to be addressing in today's episode. So, what is fascinating is that maybe you can relate to this experience that we started to hear operators talking about. I know I can. And if you can relate, you are in fact an expression. Your experience is a data point in a much larger tableau of research around what is happening with women entrepreneurs in today's economy. So, research from Avon Melick et al., who published in a publication called Research Policy in 2023, found that women actually participate in accelerators and incubators and group coaching programs at a disproportional rate, right? So they are much more represented in coaching programs and accelerators and incubators than they actually make up total businesses. And I can certainly attest to that. I have participated in more programs than my male colleagues have, that's for sure. I've enjoyed them. And what's interesting is when we do what this research found is that when women do participate, they absolutely gain more skills, they absolutely gain more confidence, and they start to make friends, which is all very cool. But from the same study, what they found was that women, regardless, were reporting significantly less progress when it came to capital access and fundraising. So the personal development that's a part of these accelerators and these incubators, that landed, but the structural outcomes didn't. Now, I have experienced this myself. I hired a coach many years ago. She was really well respected. She was a leadership coach. There's also an aspect to what she did that was quite spiritual. I worked with her for over a year, and I learned so much. I felt that I grew so much as a leader. I just felt led. I felt mentored. I felt seen. It was really, really powerful. She'd worked with some of the greats. That's why I really trusted her. And it was a period of profound personal growth. And the business didn't fundamentally change. And this is the problem. When you grow, when you develop, when you get the mentoring, when you get the coaching, and you grow and develop as a human, but your business stays under architected, in some ways the problem becomes worse because the gap between who you are and what you're capable of and who the business is and what the business is capable of, that gap starts to widen. and the pain becomes more acute. And that's what happened to me. I became a more developed founder inside a business that was, quite frankly, as somebody who looks at business systems all the time, at the time, I would say my business systems were prepubescent, to be honest. And so that gap started to feel heavier. And I actually remember going through a period of sort of mild depression. I was like, I have done all of this work and my business on myself, and my business still isn't where it should be. Right. And that's why I think it's this lie that business is the most profound personal development journey you can go on, because what it does is it links the idea between the business's development and your development. And those are not bonded closely together. I bet you know lots of very well processed, thoughtful, mature, emotionally intelligent women whose businesses do not match where they are, right? It happens all over the place. These two things are somewhat connected, but not nearly as connected as the gurus would have you believe. So the myth that keeps perpetuating this cycle is that the founder herself is the primary unit of improvement in a business. And so, what the coaching industry does is it continues to optimize the founder, but the business itself stays under architected. Not because that founder failed or that she's not good enough, but because the ecosystem continues to point women founders at the wrong layer. So that was the experience I had. I had grown significantly. The business hadn't grown. So I made the classic misdiagnosis. I was like, oh, I must, that was a great coach, but I must have had the wrong coach. I need to join a different coaching program. I need to find a different coach. And so I went higher. And I invested in for my industry and my space, like the very top coaching programs you can imagine. They were incredibly expensive. I worked with the absolute top dogs. There was nowhere higher to go. And I continued to get the same diagnosis. And I can remember actually in one group session being told that I had low self-worth. And that my self-worth was the issue, that your business can only grow to the level of your self-worth. And this was like hilarious because I actually have a healthy sense of self-worth. But also, you don't have to have perfect self-worth to have a really successful business. Look at the titans of industry, friends. Look at the primarily guys who are kind of masters of the business universe. And you tell me that these are healed, emotionally well people with high levels of self-worth. Like, that is not true, but this is what we continue to feed to women founders. So it was either my mindset was a problem or I personally needed to be willing to be more visible. And that was the sort of the second fallback position, which was that I needed to be on, IG stories 24/7. I needed to document my life. I needed to show people every aspect of my journey, and that doing that, that's where it was. Again, me, me, me. I was the unit of growth in the company. It was all on me and my personal development, my willingness to be seen, and all of this stuff. And I personally didn't like it because it felt to me extractive and like I was turning my life into a product. I just didn't want to. I am an elder millennial, early Gen Xer. That's not what we prefer to do. But it's not just that. It still treats both of those approaches continue to treat the founder as the product, not the company. So what I ultimately discovered is, hey, this is not a bad coach problem or a not the right coach problem. This is the ceiling of the entire business coaching model. And the research actually shows this. So for instance, landmark research from Boston Consulting Group and the Mass Challenge found that women-led startups receive $935,000 in funding for every $2.1 million in funding that goes to men. Yet, women-led startups generate 10% more cumulative revenue over a 5-year period. And per dollar invested, women generate 78 cents in revenue versus men-owned companies were creating 31 cents in revenue. So this shows us that women-led businesses are not underperforming. We don't need stronger leadership skills or personal development skills or stronger self-worth. Those things, by the way, are all valuable in and of themselves. The problem is when the coaching industry points to them as the reason or the thing that must be in place in order for you to grow, which is completely not backed up by any research whatsoever. So, what we're seeing is women led businesses actually outperform on less. The problem is that the system was ultimately misreading their value. I want to share a few more things. We know research from the OECD has found that women are half as likely to borrow money. Women-owned businesses get 2%, just 2% of all VC, which is crazy given how much more effective our businesses are when we get funding. And when they look at the causes, what they're finding is the reasons that these things are happening, the reasons that women-owned businesses are, in my view, criminally, just my opinion, criminally underfunded, is not because we lack self-worth. It's not because we lack confidence. It is a financing architecture problem. We know from additional research that when VCs go to invest in companies, they ask women a lot of questions about risk prevention, like how are you preparing for the downside? Whereas they ask male entrepreneurs to vision cast the future. So here's why I'm giving you this research. There is a reason here. The business coaching ecosystem gives women development when we need distribution. It gives us confidence where we need capital. It gives us mentorship where we need market architecture. And it tells her, hey, your problem is your self-worth. Your business would grow if you worked on your self-worth and your willingness to be seen, et cetera, like insert mindset problem here. When the real problem is no one is showing that woman how to architect her business for enterprise value. And what we're seeing is that across the range of business coaching options, they are all incomplete in the exact same way, including at the very top levels. Here's what's actually missing. Coaching personalizes business success, and it suggests that you as the leader are the primary unit of value in the business, that the more personally developed you are, the more successful your business will be. That's the causal link it's making. And therefore, all of the work needs to be done on you. This is divorced from reality, it's divorced from facts, and it's divorced from research. Businesses generate massive amounts of value in the economy. They make money. And for this reason, they are very studied, deeply studied. We know what produces business outcomes. It's not personal chutzpah. It's not your personal mindset. You know what that produces? Book sales. It produces Instagram views. The more you talk about personal mindset, it feels so deliciously simple and digestible. It feels like such a beautiful silver bullet solution, right? You can just change your mindset in an instant. You can change what you believe in an instant. That sells a lot of books. It's, again, super valuable in and of, like inherently valuable, but it doesn't drive business outcomes in the way that architecture does. The idea here is that developing yourself is a project and architecting your company is another project. Both are valuable, but these are two separate projects and one doesn't produce the other. And that's why so many business coaching programs fail the founder, because they develop the founder and they do not architect the business. So let's talk about what does create value and what does make a woman-led business easier to buy and easier to fund. And it's two words, and those two words are enterprise value. That is, how valuable is this business when the primary thing that business coaching targets, which is the founder. See, enterprise value is all about how valuable is the business without the founder. Now, you may say to yourself, I have no desire to sell my business. And that's cool. But do you desire to have free time? Do you desire to have autonomy? Do you desire to have compounding income? Do you desire to have the ability to go on a sabbatical for 2 months and not have to save all your money so you can stretch it over those 2 months, but actually have the business grow and deliver and serve without you? Enterprise value does that. So enterprise value is driven by predictability. How predictable is the income in your business? And this has a lot to do with recurring revenue and retention. It has to do with transferability. And does that business work without the founder? It has to do with scalability. That is, do you have repeatable systems you can use to acquire customers and deliver to them? And it has to do with your risk profile. Do you have a clear governance structure in your business? Do you have diversification? And what that means is, are you completely dependent on one or two customers, or do you have a pool of customers so your business is not dependent on any one of them? Every one of those things is an operating system output. In the SAFI ecosystem, we call these builds, right? Each of these are builds that the entrepreneur puts into place. They are not personal qualities. They're not about your self-worth, right? A business can have very high enterprise value, and the founder might have a lot of personal work to do. These are not necessarily connected together. Again, which doesn't mean that personal work isn't inherently valuable. That would be the mistake if you're listening to this episode and saying, Eleanor doesn't think personal work is valuable. I think it's massively valuable. But if personal work drove business value, you would not see so many deranged, multi-billionaire entrepreneurs at the head of companies and at the in seats of power across the globe right now. So that logic does not hold up. But it does sell a lot of books, right? It does sell a lot of books, and it does drive a lot of Instagram reel views when you're having a bad day and you just need a quick hit of dopamine and you need somebody telling you you're just one thought away from the life you dream of. So I want to share what the research does tell us about how to build a cash-rich company that has value, that is stable, that endures. Let's talk about financial legibility. And what that means is, can people actually invest in your business? Do they understand their numbers? Could you buy it? Can you see your numbers? What the Women's Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub found in 2024 is that when it comes to selling a business and growing a business, financial assessment criteria, investor bias, investor preferences, male networks, all of these things, women-owned businesses are under-architected. They are structurally illegible. Because they're under-architected, it's difficult for an acquirer or a really high-powered connection to take a look at your business and understand what's going on. It's not because you don't have a strong business, it's because it's under-architected, it's not legible to them. So having clear cash protocols as an example in place, super, super important. The market can't underwrite or invest in what it can't see. When do we talk about that? In coaching programs. Let's talk about research and network convertibility. So the National Women's Business Council found that women basically lack access to asymmetric power relationships. So we have lots of kind of business besties, but those relationships are harder to convert commercially. So when people are telling you to network more, that actually misses the point. Converting relationships into cash is a system. You can have all the warm relationships that you want, but if you don't have deal flow architecture or customer acquisition architecture specifically, you now have a commercial gap, not a networking gap. And then sort of the broader architecture, what the World Bank found is that one of the biggest things limiting women's employment and entrepreneurship is childcare and the care economy, period. So I want to land this in these different pieces of research that I've shared by saying, what was never built in your business This is the thing that makes women-led businesses harder to invest in, harder to value, and harder to transfer to somebody else. They keep your business built around you. They make the business smaller, they make the business more dependent on you, and they ultimately stall growth, not your mindset and your self-worth. It's these architecture things. Therefore, the things that you need to install in your business is architecture, specifically customer acquisition systems. That's revenue. Monetization architecture. This is not just how you price, but how you leverage your business model to maximize the value of any single customer. Governance structure. And what this means is, do you have a clear roadmap that's going to really govern, hey, what are you focused on in the next 90 days? What are you focused on in the next 6 months? Where are you going to be in a year, in 3 years? And are you executing a plan, or are you doing it all based on intuition? And then, of course, you want cash protocols. So that one of the most important things, and this isn't just have a good bookkeeper, it's have strong visibility into your cash and know how to use cash as a strategic lever for growth. And finally, founder liquidity. And this means really having the systems in place that the business is not you. These are the things that produce enterprise value. And this is the kind of architecture that unlocks massive opportunity, the kind of opportunity that guys are getting, to be quite honest. The entire coaching ecosystem was designed to optimize you, not to optimize or architect the architecture and the systems underneath you. And that, my friend, is how you can spend money and time inside a coaching program, feel incredible amounts of gratitude for how you've grown, but not have made a meaningful difference in the business and the underlying business architecture. So, what does this mean? When a woman-owned business is under-architected, that business is going to be harder to finance. That means your whole system takes way longer to build. That means you have way weaker metrics in the business, which in turn, again, makes it harder to access capital, to exit the business, to sell. So it totally, when we invest in only growing you, but not growing the business infrastructure, we reinforce the loop. The gap is still there. And in fact, the gap actually starts to compound, not because you're slow or you lack self-worth, but because the underlying infrastructure was never built. And this is meaningful, basically, because it's the difference, for a business doing $500,000 a year, this can be the difference in, 7 figures when it comes to exiting your business. It's huge. So that we're talking real money here. So what I'll share is that the real cost is not simply coaching fees or time. The cost is the enterprise value that never got built. The personal growth was real. The business growth was deferred, and deferred growth always compounds more than you realize. So if you recognize this problem, the problem isn't you, and the problem wasn't that you had a bad coach. The problem is that you were using a mode, i.e. coaching, to try to solve something it's not meant to solve, which is business architecture. They're two different things. Nobody ever architected the business. They optimized you. And that's how you can grow and develop and feel like your business hasn't made commensurate leaps. So this is solvable, and it starts with understanding where are the critical infrastructure gaps in my business right now. And the most important architecture gaps for any woman-owned business to close, at least in the beginning, are the revenue gaps. So I would encourage you to take our SAFI Sales Architecture Diagnostic. It's a 6-question diagnostic that helps you understand what is the current state of my customer acquisition architecture, my sales architecture, and what do I need to do in the next 30, 60, 90 days to optimize that so I can really fund the continued growth of my business. So you can take that diagnostic at safimedia.co/sales. That's safimedia.co/sales. Thank you so much for tuning into the episode. If you found value in what I shared, please go ahead and like this video, give it a thumbs up, and leave me a review or leave a comment below. And don't forget to subscribe. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you next week.